Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be going through how to choose what the best camera is for you. So it's really only been about 11 years since the 5D Mark II came out. Changed the world. Before that, cameras were very much a difficult purchase. They were all very expensive and none of them seemed to achieve what a lot of the filmmakers wanted to achieve in terms of the quality of the image and the look that they could actually record.
Can anybody tell me what's wrong with this picture?
All of the big guns in the cinema industry are now making cameras where they're actually sharing that top tier cutting edge technology with the indie filmmakers, with the creators, with the smaller budgets.
Finally.
So we get this little inkling, and it starts off with maybe a little Google search here.
Did you see one?
A little YouTube search there. There are a lot of new cameras, especially in 2020, a lot of really good cameras came out. And there's been some fantastic cameras coming out over the past 3 years.
Unfortunately, I think that's true.
So when you get this little inkling, a little scratch at the back of your head, this camera could do slow motion that's 10% slower than your previous camera. So I'm here today to help you ask the right questions of the next camera you're thinking of purchasing.
I bet on sure things.
Right, we're going to debunk a couple of things. Just because the camera came out very recently or is the most recent iteration of that camera doesn't mean that it's the right camera for you. Now, I know it is our inclination to go, but this camera only came out 1 month ago and that camera came out a year ago. That is no longer the exact representation of a good or a bad camera. So I want you to clear that from your mind that you need to get the most recent camera.
We're here because you're looking for the best of the best of the best, sir.
Secondly, I'm going to debunk, and I know many of you probably already know this, but I want to really ingrain this in your heads. Resolution is not and has not been for a very long time the right way to decide which camera you'll be going with. I know there's a big push to get 8K and 12K cameras. Thank you, Blackmagic. However, I think a very quick YouTube and Google search shows that more resolution does not necessarily mean more detail or more definition. Instead, you've got to think about resolution as a tool in your toolbox. YouTube channels such as Linus Tech Tips uses a singular camera with a very high resolution, and they use that as part of their editing techniques to punch in and then punch back out. I do that quite regularly with my camera, but I don't need 12K to do it. In fact, I only shoot in 3.8K and then zoom in on that. Of course, those of you who are watching on your 8K 80-inch screen probably are noticing a slight drop in resolution right now. Yeah, can see it, can you see it? Anyway, so after my 15 years in the film industry, and I have bought a lot of cameras in my time.
Anyway, you know how I have been searching forever.
Each and every time I bought a camera, the one element that has always stayed true has not been the resolution, hasn't been the size of the sensor, or how sensitive the camera is in low light. It's been the bit depth.
The bits! The bits! The bits!
For those of you who don't know what bit depth means, it is essentially how much information is given to each color for each pixel. For instance, if a particular pixel is bright red, how much information does that pixel have to tell the camera or to tell the screen which type of red it is? And with each and every pixel, The more data per pixel it's allowed to record, the more data is going to be recorded across the entire image.
I'll try and avoid it.
As a second priority, I do believe that the color science of that particular camera is incredibly important. This is not just about how good the skin tones look, but it is a consideration of workflow. If the color science of the camera is really good, such as I believe the Canon cameras and the Blackmagic cameras have a really sound color science, then it makes the workflow at the end of your post process so much easier. It makes it easier to get to a more appealing look with your footage. Sony suffered for many years with the dreaded magenta shift or green skin tones.
I beg your pardon, are you ill?
And I would say of recent with the Sony FX6, they have actually come really long distance to getting really sound colors. I also think that the red cameras have always had a very appealing color science.
Interesting.
So I would take a look at some raw footage from each of the cameras that you're looking at and just see how those colors then grade into the look that you would like to create. And this is where we come back to having more information in each of our color channels.
More?
You see, the more information in those color channels, the more we are able to push the image towards particular looks without the information, without the image starting to break apart. Much as, well, I mean, to be honest, older footage from like the Canon 5D Mark II or Mark III or Mark IV, I don't know which mark they're on now, would break apart quite easily. So you would actually have to get much closer to your final look in camera than I think you have to with more modern cameras that can shoot in a bigger bit depth or in raw image formats such as the Blackmagic cameras and the red cameras.
Oh my God, there's so much to remember.
The audience doesn't care what camera you filmed with. They only care about how good the image looks and has the message, has the story of your film been conveyed effectively. Now, of course, it comes back to the more information in your image, the more effectively you are able to have your creative choices realized and therefore tell your story more effectively. I digress. Third, but not last, I believe that you do need to look at the usability of the camera. Now, again, I don't mean how many things you can bolt onto the side of it. There are core functions of a camera that just make sense when using it in almost any production situation. So first things first, I believe that the autofocus on the Canon cameras is by far probably one of the most advanced autofocus systems
with advanced alien technology.
Quite apart from it being almost magical with how quickly it's able to grab focus and keep it, it also has features like autofocusing on animals as well. Now, Sony has also made some really good inroads here, but they do lack some of the features and a little bit of the accuracy, although some of the touch tracking is very good on the Sony cameras. The new red camera Komodo also has some autofocus features, although I would wait a little bit for some new versions once they've worked out some of the kinks.
That's perfect. It is.
Another brilliantly important accessory slash feature in a camera is internal NDs. Now, very few camera systems have internal NDs, but this is a staple of the Sony range of cameras. Now, as long as you don't buy one of their Sony mirrorless DSLRs, then you are going to get internal electronic NDs, and they are brilliant. They really make a massive difference to the usability of the camera. There really is nothing quite like having that flexibility of not having to change your shutter speed, ISO or aperture to change how much light is coming into your camera. And in a documentary situation, that is worth its weight in gold.
It means nothing to anybody.
Now, DSLRs are not well known for lasting a long time, such as the Blackmagic Cinema Pocket 4K camera only lasts roughly an hour on each LPE6 battery. The Canon cameras, Sony cameras, and Panasonic DSLR cameras all kind of fit into a similar-ish area between an hour and 2 hours of battery life for their internal batteries. The FX6, you can plug in very, very large batteries into the back, and because the battery system is still housed within the body, you're not having to do some finagly cage system where the battery's plugged onto the side or in the battery grip or on top or on the back and too much. Now all of these external battery solutions, they do solve the problem with DSLRs. However, they do create a new problem for DSLRs as well. They make probably one of the biggest benefits of having a DSLR camera completely moot. DSLRs are great because of their size, because of how quick you're able to use them. But as soon as you add a large battery solution onto the side, back, or top, you're now kind of getting rid of its entire benefit.
You are dead to me.
What are you producing? This should be the ultimate deciding factor at which camera you purchase, because not one camera system does everything perfectly. Instead, each camera system solves very specific problems very well. Canon has brought out the brilliant Canon R5. However, if you need to shoot long-form documentary, well, because of its overheating, it kind of makes that camera moot. The Sony cameras have a fantastic low-light 4K beast. But what if you're trying to shoot something that requires you to have autofocus on animals? The Sony FX6 is a fantastic camera, fully featured, brilliant sound. But as soon as you take the top handle off, you lose all of the microphone inputs. Each camera has a positive and a negative. So how do you get past that?
Which way? Which way?
How do you make sense of what seems like an impossible decision? And it really comes back down to, what are you making?
I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
So I shoot YouTube content for you guys. I shoot corporates, music videos, and short films for the most part. And pretty much the only camera at the time of purchase, which was in 2018, that could do that within my budget, which was not a huge amount, was the Blackmagic Cinema Pocket 4K camera. If I was doing documentary work, I probably would have looked at one of the Sony cameras such as the FS7, FS9, or even now with the FX6. That is a very tempting camera.
Give it to me.
What did I need this camera to do well, and what didn't matter so much? What were the things that I could work around? So with all of this in mind, I suppose you probably want to know what, in my opinion, are the top 3 cameras for you self-shooting filmmakers out there. So when it comes to documentary and promo work, I think hands down the best camera for the money right now is the Sony FX6. At £6,000, it's not a cheap camera, given the size of the sensor, the quality of the image, the color science, the bit depth, the internal recording, the internal NDs, the XLR microphone inputs, and the form factor. It's tiny and very, very light. It is a very, very good camera for the money. The next one on my list at £3,800 is the Sony a7S III. This is a beast of a camera. It has a lot of similarities to its bigger brethren, the Sony FX6, but it also has some brilliant features in the camera as well. It is so much smaller, it's cheaper, but it holds so much of the quality of the image, as well as the internal recording, the brilliant on-screen tracking, as well as autofocus within the camera, which is so much better than the previous versions, as well as the color science, which has been completely revamped since the early Sony camera days. It is a fantastic camera and well recognized as probably one of the best cameras of 2020.
I'm the best.
Finally, and I'm going to throw maybe a slightly controversial camera into the mix, at only £1,300, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K is still probably my favourite camera to use. It is so easy, brilliant colour science, still a top-notch 12-bit raw internal recording, and it suits my production needs, YouTube, corporate, long form and short form, with very, very minimal accessories. It's just a brilliant camera, and there's a very good reason that a 3-year-old camera has held its price for so long. Its slightly more expensive 6K version with the Canon EF mount is also fantastic as well. I thoroughly recommend you check out those 3 cameras, and depending on your budget level, you can make a really informed decision if you take into consideration the bit depth, the color science, the usability, and what ultimately are you producing day in and day out.
Well, I know everything.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please check out links below to help you up your game on your next film.
Then try to tell me you got